Hello and welcome. April somehow felt both slow and full at the same time. Somehow I didn't get in as much reading as I thought I would. So today I am sharing 10 books with you for this reading vlog wrap-up video, but regrettably I didn't finish one of them, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. It ended up that this month I feel like I just picked up books just kind of in the pockets of my day. I had audiobooks for going on errands and outings, and this kind of ended up with me having a mix of books that really kind of reflected the mood I was in and the time that I had. So I'm going to share a little look at April through my reading experiences, and that's what I read, what surprised me, what worked for me, what didn't, and share some of the books that became favorites and one that really kind of sent me down an unexpected reading path. You know the old saying, April showers brings May flowers? Well, it is true where I live. We started out the month of April with a lot of rain. So on a dreary day, I decided to get out and get to a coffee shop to read Wormwood Abbey, The Secrets of Ormdale, Book 1 by Christina Baehr. This was on my TBR. This has been on my physical TBR for almost a year. I think I got it last year for my birthday. I really loved this. It was just this little gem. We follow Edith Worms, who is a Victorian clergyman's daughter. It turns out that her family have inherited this estate, and so they travel to the estate to see and kind of meet family that they haven't seen and been around. Her dad left when he was younger, and when they get there are daughters that are already running the estate, and so the family's very cautious about stepping on any toes. But while Edith is there, she saves this lizard from the fire, like literally out of a fire, and through a whole series of events discovers that it's not actually a lizard, it is a dragon, and that this estate is meant to be a protection for English society against dragons. They are dangerous creatures. Now, obviously not the one that Edith found in the fire, so there are extenuating circumstances that allow some dragons to be safe, but for the most part, they are needing to protect people, and we go from there. This is also the first book in a series and one that I am looking forward to continuing. On yet another rainy day, I picked up Spring Harvest by Gladys Tabor and really enjoyed this delightful book. I am only used to Gladys Tabor's nonfiction works, and so to read a fiction was a really enjoyable experience. Spring Harvest reminds me a bit of a mix between Crampton Hodgson by Barbara Pym and I think it's 1990s Mona Lisa Smiles movie. The combination of a educational system, a university, as well as the challenges that females have in that university system, compared with Crampton Hodgson, where we've got professors and deans who have their own family and marital issues. It's all rolled up together in Gladys Tabor's Spring Harvest. I will caution, there is absolutely content warnings in this. If you are concerned about it, you can just send me a message and I will respond to let you know what it is. But there is an event that happens in this that is one of my personal trigger warnings that I was not expecting. It really didn't seem to connect very much with the plot, so I still kind of find it surprising that it's in there, but it is there nonetheless. It still did not dampen my enjoyment of the book, though, to have that in there, and I just really enjoyed it. And frankly, if I am kind of comparing between Crampton Hodgson by Barbara Pym and Gladys Tabor's Spring Harvest, for a reread, I would choose Spring Harvest. Let me just read to you one of my favorite lines in the book. It says, "Problems are universal. It's facing them that's individual." And that really sums up the themes in the book. It really, truly does. I find that graveyards are a place of solace and quiet in a very busy and loud world. And I am always respectful. There is a bench set here just so that you could come and sit in the quiet. The morning is cool and breezy and lovely. And I thought that this would be the perfect setting to come out and finish The Shuttle by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Frances Hodgson Burnett wrote The Secret Garden, The Little Princess, Little Lord Fauntleroy, all books that I had grown up reading and even reread. And it wasn't until recently that I discovered that she had adult novels as well that don't seem to carry as much awareness. And you will hear me talking a lot more about The Shuttle in upcoming videos. This book is possibly going to be my favorite book of the year. It's definitely in the top running. It was fantastic. And part of the reason why I wanted to come up here to finish it is I've actually been listening to it on LibriVox because I just really felt immersed in it to be able to have this copy to read when the suspense and tension was very intense, but then also to just have a relaxing time listening to it. I've really spread it out across the month. It's just been such a balm, which, considering the subject matter, can be a little bit confusing. So in this, we have the Vanderpool family. We've got two daughters, Rosalie and Bettina. They have a significant age difference, and we are really set during the time of American and British history when British gentry, who had titles and possibly land, but no capital, came to the United States to find rich American heiresses to marry. Enter Sir Nigel Anstruthers. He is just a cad. And honestly, that's probably a nice word for him. He's just very evil man, to be honest. So he woos Rosalie. Her father allows their marriage to occur. And Bettina immediately doesn't like him, even from being a young child. Rosalie travels with Sir Nigel back to England. And from that point on, she is separated from her family and just treated very cruelly in all ways imaginable. And that takes quite a bit of the first part of the novel. But once Betty grows up, she really continues to have this love for Rosalie and is very confused about why, after she left, they never heard from her. They would hear little things like, oh, she's out in London society and she thinks she's too good for you now that she is married to someone with a title. But Betty, it really doesn't sit well with her. And so she travels to England to find her sister, and she discovers a shell of a woman. So this book very heavily deals with emotional abuse, physical abuse, just really awful circumstances. And yet there is such a theme of hope and redemption in this. There's like village life. We kind of get a feel for what the village is that Sir Nigel is kind of responsible for. It's just so fantastic. And again, I knew I was getting close to the end. There is just this very intense scene where you are just on the edge of your seat, nail biting. It's so intense. I just have been so pleasantly surprised by The Shuttle. It was so fantastic. So now that I have sadly finished this, I am going to get into my next book. I brought that along. And it is This Rough Magic by Mary Stewart. This has been one that I wanted to read in March and didn't get to, but I am not just moving on from it. I do want to read it. It is set in Corfu, and I am feeling like, even though it's a little chilly this morning, we've actually had a few very warm days. So I feel like a summer setting in Corfu is just perfectly timed for this time in spring. In this, we have two sisters, one of whom is an actress. She's kind of down on her luck. Her show closed. It really didn't open up the doors for her that she wanted to, and so she's agreed to go and visit her sister in Corfu, and upon her arrival, she hears that a famous actor who sort of became a recluse just a few years before, without much explanation, is actually living there in Corfu near this family. And so the sister's interest is piqued, and we go from there. I am looking for something that's a little bit more light, but I do also fully expect some suspense as well. So we will get started here on this rough magic. So this is set in Corfu. And we have Lucy Waring. She is an actress whose show has closed. She really didn't have any prospects, and so she decided to go and stay with her sister for the summer. So it really is a great summer read because it is beachy, swimming, ocean experience. When Lucy arrives, she makes an instant connection to a dolphin. They have this like magical experience. She discovers someone trying to shoot the dolphin, which I was horrified by. No concerns, though, for those of you who don't want animal trauma. There isn't any like lasting trauma for the dolphin, just the fact that someone's shooting at it. And that's traumatizing enough as it is. You kind of learn that there are things going on in this island that are not kind of as they appear. There is an example of instantaneous love. It really feels like there's this moment between two characters. The dolphin is involved, of course, where through their interactions with the dolphins, they just realize they love each other. And it's immediate. And then it doesn't change. We're not ever worried about their relationship and, anything. They just are connected, and that's how that goes. Which, honestly, I kind of like because I'm not a big romance lover, so I don't like the turmoil around romance. I'm happy if two people find each other and they're happy with each other. I took this rough magic with me to a couple nature preserves and a botanical garden. It just was nice to just throw into my bag. It's not the biggest, heaviest, thickest book out there, and it also was pretty easy for me to jump in and out of just depending on where I was for the day. There are not a ton of characters in this, as long as kind of at the beginning you can kind of grasp how everyone is connected. I will say, the moment I met the villain, I knew it was the villain. You get a sense in your intuition, in your gut, that that's the villain. That's the villain. And there is also a big connection with the play The Tempest by William Shakespeare. I found myself feeling like I should be reading about Prospero and reading The Tempest simultaneously with this book. In fact, this rough magic, which is the title of the book, is a line in the play. So I do think that it would be interesting to read both of them together simultaneously, but I did not. I just enjoyed this rough magic for what it was. And I will say Miss Lucy Waring is quite brave. She's got nerves of steel. She did some things that I was like, no, what are you doing? But, this is a great Mary Stewart. I loved it. Lots of suspense and intrigue and all of that. So fantastic. Really enjoyed this. This month had a lot of mysteries in them, which was kind of surprising. I wasn't really expecting that as far as what was on my TBR, but I read 4/5 mysteries. So I'm just going to go ahead and start off with my thoughts on all of those. So the first one to mention is I did a deep dive into vintage girl sleuths this month, and it turned out to be so much fun. I had no idea that so many people loved Trixie Belden as much as I did. So I just really felt very seen and kind of among my own people. But I did also discover Penny Parker, who is a girl sleuth written by Mildred Wirt Benson, who was the originator of Nancy Drew. So even though Nancy Drew, the covers of the book say Carolyn Keene, Mildred Wirt Benson was actually the writer. And I discovered through my research that she had written a sleuth under her own name, named Penny Parker. There is a mega pack on Kindle as an ebook that you could get like 15 of the 17 books in the series for a nominal cost. I think it was like $2 or $3. So I went ahead and read the first book that I could in that series, which actually is the third book, which was Danger at the Drawbridge. And I really enjoyed it. It was a surprise for me how much I did enjoy it, and I am ecstatic that I have more in that series to dive into. I loved Penny's personality, just really kind of reminiscent of Trixie in some ways, and then of Nancy, obviously, in others. So all of that to say, I just feel rejuvenated in my desire to read through vintage girl sleuth books and to kind of continue down that whole rabbit trail. So that was the first mystery that I read in the month. And then I decided I needed a light mystery to read while going to plant nurseries and doing some planting around our house. So it's spring where I live, and that means working in my flower beds, getting mulching done, kind of just working outside. And so while I'm getting my hands dirty, I do like to have an audiobook. And so I went ahead and just continued the Carlene O'Connor Irish Village Mystery series. I started in the middle of the series on the 6th book last Christmas season because I found one used somewhere. And I am continuing the series. So I read the first book in the series last month.
The next day, the grey skies were back. The rain drummed on the roof and lashed against the windows, and the wind whipped the front bell into a frenzy.
I went ahead and jumped into this second book. I will say, so far the second book is my least favorite. I am thinking, just because I have read other books in the series past this, that the author kind of changes route and kind of gets settled into the main characters, but I was kind of annoyed by the main characters. In this, we have a wedding, and there is a murder at the wedding of the best man. I will say, the person who I thought had been the killer, they ended up dead. So I was like, oh, I guess I'm not on the right track. So I definitely was into it enough of not really knowing what was going to happen and who had murdered anyone until everything started to click into place near the very end. And then I was like, oh, wow. So it's definitely entertaining. I like the audiobook narrator so much. She has this beautiful Irish brogue. Just lovely. This really was a great book to just listen to while I was outside planting. Another mystery that I listened to was The Maid by Nita Prose. Friends of ours, we all ended up at the library together at one point over the month, and my friend grabbed The Maid from the library shelf and was like, oh, I've heard about this. I want to read this. And so she checked it out. And when I got home, I thought, I kind of want to read that too. So I went and looked on Libby, and The Maid was available. And so I texted her and was like, hey, how about if we read it together? She has the physical copy and I would just listen to it. And then we just kind of sent each other voice memos as we were reading it, sharing our thoughts and our theories. And I'll say what I say a lot, it seems like, but having buddy reads and making reading a community experience, just reading even just with a friend or your mom or your kids, just enriches a reading experience tenfold. So we just had so much fun talking back and forth about our theories. I really enjoyed it. I know I've recommended mystery series and people have mentioned language. So I did want to mention there is some language in there. There also are modern sensibilities. So there's drugs that are mentioned. I think it's categorized as a cozy mystery. I think it's probably about as cozy as the Carlene O'Connor that I'm reading. It's not super gory or super violent. The main character, Molly, is neurodiverse. She's, definitely has a cognitive disability of some sort. She kind of accepts it. She acknowledges it. There is some discourse around the bullying that she's experienced and the meanness in society towards her simply because she is different, but she handles it really well. So I really enjoyed it, and it turns out that this is a series, and so I'm totally into listening to more of this Maid series. I loved this mystery, and was kind of mind blown. There is a twist that, hopefully this isn't giving away too much, but the epilogue was a true epilogue where everything gets revealed, which I loved so much. I thought, oh, okay, this kind of ended maybe a little bit of the way I had been expecting until you get to the epilogue. And I was like, whoa. So very entertaining. Again, so fun to read with my friend. So I really enjoyed The Maid. The next mystery that I read is A Case of Mice and Murder. This is by Sally Smith. So what I love about this is Sally Smith is a barrister and she worked in the King's Council not 100% sure what that means, says she was inspired by historic surroundings and rich history of the inner temple in which she still lives and works. So I don't know that much about the legal system in England. I don't know that much about the inner temple and the judges and all of that. But this book opened my eyes to its existence, and I am fascinated by it. So we have Gabriel Ward. He fulfills the role of the inspector or the detective in this. Gabriel also is very neurodiverse. I don't think quite to the extreme that Molly is portrayed, but he very much has habits that just sort of infer that he's neurodiverse. And this was just a very interesting mystery. So it's not light and like easy to kind of get through quickly, and it isn't super modern language and simple to kind of understand what's going on. This was the slowest mystery book that I read this month because there are a lot of characters, because it is a setting I'm not familiar with this inner temple and the judges and all of that. Again, there were a lot of characters, and there were actually two different mysteries. So the mice is the contended author, who was like a secret author of the publication of books about a church mouse, and it just kind of was like moralizing and, you know, kind of taught us how to live through this mouth, and it was immensely popular. No one knew who the author was, and then someone said that they were the author, and we ended up in that case, and Gabriel was part of that judgment. And then we had the murder of a very prestigious high level judge in the inner temple, and we go from there. And definitely throughout this book I was like, are they related? They must be related because it talks about of mice and murder, so somehow they're related. The victim was found without socks and shoes on, and so that's a very odd part to this where you're like, how is that connected? But for the most part, I was able to kind of pinpoint the person that I thought had done it, and also understand why, and track that through and not get thrown off by red herrings, and eventually kind of saw how it was all connected. So I think this one was easier to kind of predict, but again, so fascinating with the setting, and really had a learning experience for me for the Inner Temple. All of that said, I ended up grabbing Old Filth by Jane Gardham from the library. And unfortunately, I think, only a third of the way through. But this also has some connection to the Inner Temple and judges in this same system, except that Filth, who is our main character, is in Hong Kong. So that's what the Phil stands for. Failed in London, tried Hong Kong. This, again, is not a fast read for me, much like this. It's something where, even though I am finding the sentence structures to be very short and brief and kind of, it's like staccato rhythm if you play an instrument, but it's definitely fascinating, and again, a world that I don't know that much about, and so I do want to continue it. I'm just concerned because we're going into Mayflower's readathon, which means I'm reading all books with flowers on the cover. This does not have a flower on the cover, so I'm really kind of trying to figure out how I'm going to be able to get back to this, because I do want to finish this. So this is my 10th book that I have not finished, but really am hoping to finish. And I also, just to get back to this is the first book in a series. There are additional books, I think 2 at least. I think there's a second one that's out already. So, and again, I liked Gabriel Ward enough that and also Sally Smith's writing style, to consider reading the next book in this series as well. And then lastly, we read Larkrise by Flora Thompson for the Cozy Reader Book Club. And I have a lot of thoughts about this, which we did kind of share in our book club meeting, and there is a post up on our Substack as well that has comments in it, post book club. it's a very touchy subject for me to say I didn't like this book, because I don't think that's actually the case. I was expecting a different style of book than what Larkrise ended up being. And I was so kind of confused about why I was feeling kind of like it was a bit of a struggle. And I was having, I basically just gave myself a quota. I need to read this many pages each day in order to be done by book club. It was not a fast read. I was sort of looking at it like, oh, I have to read this for book club instead of I get to. And so then I thought, okay, I'm going to watch the show. I haven't yet watched the show. I thought I'm going to put that on and see, if that helps me kind of get into the characters in this. And lo and behold, I recognize Mr. Bates from Downton Abbey, who's the dad in the show. But otherwise, the actual characters and where we jumped into this series is not at all what's happening in this first book of the 3-book series. We just kind of skipped over the first book with the series. So I don't know if that means that the second book is better, or kind of what made them decide to use the second book as the basis for the whole series. But the characters that I really enjoyed in this were not in the series, and it just was totally different. It was not helpful at all. So this is more of a memoir. This is a time period in Flora's life that she is sharing of her childhood. We had a discussion in book club, is it more realist or nostalgic? Everybody really thought it was very realistic. I thought it was very nostalgic. I thought it was a looking back at childhood the way that we often do, and it just felt like a bygone era that we miss and wish we could get back to. But, we had a chapter on the school system. The best chapter I thought was the chapter on how they handled holidays. So this whole thing about May Day, which I found really fascinating. So I think if I had gone into this as a nonfiction, Jen had even said if we had chosen it as nonfiction November, it would have been a different story because we would have been expecting nonfiction. I was expecting this wholesome, quirky, a story of, fictional characters from 120 years ago, rather than this sort of dry, like, this is what we did for school. This is how we handled holidays, that kind of a thing. So anyway, all of that to say, I am not going to say I'm not going to finish the trilogy, but I don't know when I will. I will put it over on my TBR stack to pick up. Maybe I should pick it up again in nonfiction November. I do want to continue watching the series, so I don't know if that's kind of my encouragement of like, okay, I'll watch the series and I'll read a little bit and kind of do it that way. But I wasn't the most energized to be picking this up, and I think for a book club book, it does make it challenging. So I would love to hear what you read in the month of April and what you enjoyed, maybe what you didn't, maybe what you weren't able to get to, or like me, couldn't actually get finished, which is kind of frustrating, but there's nothing that says we have to finish on the exact calendar end of a month, right? Sometimes life happens and it just bleeds into another month. But I would love to know about your reading experience this past month. So be sure to leave all of that down in the comments below. As always, thanks so much for watching, and until next time.